You are speaking every day, but you are not being heard. You talk more, you explain more, you justify more. And the more you talk, the weaker your position becomes. Powerful communication is not about saying more. It's about saying less with precision. You have a choice. Speak to be liked, or speak to be respected. That's the key. This book will teach you how power actually speaks, why silence dominates noise, why clarity beats charisma, and why the people who control conversations control outcomes. You don't need their permission. You need discipline. Let's begin.
Chapter 1. Stop talking, start controlling. Most people speak to release emotion. Powerful people speak to direct outcomes. That's the difference. One talks to feel heard. The other talks to be effective. And you have a choice. Every time you open your mouth, you have a choice. React or respond. Venting or leading. Noise or control. Less words, more weight. Most people over-explain. They justify. They defend. They fill silence because silence makes them nervous. But silence is not weakness. Silence is positioning. It's not about confidence, it's about control. Walk into any room, watch carefully. The most insecure person speaks first and speaks most. They interrupt, they ramble, they overshare details nobody asked for. Why? Because they want approval. Now look at the person who actually commands the room. They don't rush, they don't chase attention, they listen. And when they speak, everyone adjusts. Less words, more weight. In negotiations, the person who talks first often loses. In arguments, the person who reacts emotionally loses authority. In leadership, the person who explains too much weakens their position. You have a choice. You can speak to impress, or you can speak to influence. It's not about confidence, it's about control. Control of timing, control of tone, control of emotion. Here's what over-explaining does. It signals doubt. When you say, well, what I meant was, when you send 3 follow-up messages clarifying yourself, when you defend a decision nobody challenged, you shrink your authority. You don't need their permission. You don't need their validation. You need discipline. Less words, more weight. Think about powerful leaders. They don't narrate their every thought. They issue clear direction. They pause. They let the silence apply pressure. That's the key. Silence forces other people to reveal themselves. Silence forces clarity. Silence builds presence. Talking too much leaks power. Here's what you must start doing. First, slow down your response time. When someone challenges you, pause. 3 seconds. Let them sit in what they said. You have a choice. React instantly and lose control, or pause and take control. That pause communicates strength. It says, I am not shaken. It's not about confidence, it's about control. Second, cut your sentences in half. If you can say it in 10 words, don't use 20. If you can say it in 1 sentence, don't use 3. Clarity is power. Rambling is weakness. Instead of, I just wanted to explain that the reason I did that was because I thought maybe, say, I made that decision deliberately. Stop cushioning your words. Third, stop answering unasked questions. When you finish a statement and immediately start justifying it, ask yourself why. Who are you trying to convince? You don't need their permission. Powerful people state. They don't plead. Less words, more weight. Now let's talk about relationships. Over-talking kills attraction. Over-explaining kills mystery. Constantly defending yourself kills respect. When you feel the urge to send that extra paragraph text message, don't. When you feel the urge to explain your entire emotional history during a minor disagreement, don't. You have a choice. Emotional release or emotional discipline. It's not about confidence, it's about control. Control creates safety. Control creates gravity. Control creates authority. In professional settings, this matters even more. Imagine 2 employees. One constantly explains their workload, their stress, their reasoning. They speak in long emotional paragraphs. The other delivers results, gives concise updates, speaks only when necessary.
Who gets promoted? Less words, more weight. The world rewards clarity, not noise. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Talking too much is often insecurity disguised as enthusiasm. You think you're being transparent. You're actually leaking authority. You think you're being passionate. You're actually being reactive. You have a choice. Here's a practical exercise. For the next 7 days, speak 30% less in every conversation. Listen more, observe more. Let others fill the gaps. When someone asks a question, answer directly. Stop. No extra commentary. No emotional padding. That's the key. Another rule. Never explain a decision twice. If someone keeps pushing after you've answered clearly, repeat the same sentence calmly. No added emotion, no added detail. Repetition without escalation. That is control. It's not about confidence, it's about control. Now understand this. Control of speech leads to control of emotion. Control of emotion leads to control of outcomes. When you stop talking impulsively, you start thinking strategically. And strategy changes everything. Powerful people are not the loudest. They are the most measured. They don't chase attention. Attention moves toward them. Less words, more weight. But let me be clear. This is not about becoming silent and passive. This is about intentional speech. When you speak, it must move something, shift something, clarify something. If it doesn't need to be said. You have a choice. Fill space or command space. Most people fear silence because silence exposes insecurity. But you are training discipline. You are training restraint. And restraint is power. Remember this line. It's not about confidence, it's about control. Confidence can be faked. Control cannot. Control shows in your breathing, in your pacing, in your ability to hold eye contact without rushing to speak. That is presence. That is authority. That is leadership. And leadership begins with self-leadership. If you cannot control your tongue, you cannot control your life. That's the truth. Stop talking to be liked. Start speaking to lead. Less words, more weight. You mastered your voice. You stopped leaking energy. You chose control over emotion. But words are only one form of power. Next we go deeper. Because controlling your speech is one thing. Controlling your reactions is another level entirely.
Chapter 2. Silence is not weakness, it's a weapon. Most people are afraid of silence. They rush to fill it. They joke to soften it. They talk to escape it. Powerful people use it. Silence creates leverage. You have a choice. You can rush to break the tension, or you can let the tension work for you. That's the key. In every conversation, there is a moment after words are spoken where pressure builds. That pressure is uncomfortable. And whoever breaks first usually loses position. Silence creates leverage. Think about interrogations. The skilled interrogator asks a direct question, then stops talking. No extra words. No emotional reaction. Just eye contact. Stillness. What happens? The other person starts filling the silence. They add details. They contradict themselves. They reveal more than they planned. Why? Because silence applies pressure. Power waits. In negotiations, the same rule applies. You make an offer. Then stop. Do not justify it. Do not defend it. Do not explain your logic. Just stop. Silence creates leverage. The other person will feel the need to respond. They will counter. They will adjust. They will expose their urgency. You don't need their permission. You don't need to convince them with endless words. You need discipline. It's not about confidence, it's about discipline. Most people talk because they're nervous. They mistake activity for strength, noise for control. But control is calm. Control is steady breathing. Control is holding eye contact. Control is letting your words land without chasing approval. Power waits. In high-stakes business meetings, the most powerful person in the room is rarely the loudest.
It's the one who listens the longest. They observe. They calculate. They say little. And when they speak, the room shifts. Silence creates leverage. Here's what you must understand. When you react instantly, you surrender control. Someone criticizes you. You defend immediately. Someone challenges you. You raise your voice. Someone insults you. You fire back. You have a choice. React emotionally, or respond strategically. That's the key. Non-reaction is not weakness. Non-reaction is strength under control. It signals, I am not threatened. I am not rushed. I am not shaken. You don't need their permission to stay calm. In fact, the calmer you are, the more unstable they feel. Silence creates leverage. Here's a practical rule. When someone says something provocative, count to 5 in your head before responding. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You will notice something powerful. Half of what you wanted to say disappears. Emotion fades. Clarity rises. Power waits. Another rule. When you finish speaking in a meeting, do not add a nervous follow-up sentence. No, does that make sense? No, just my opinion. No, sorry, I'm just thinking out loud. Stop. Let your words sit. You don't need their permission. The moment you add disclaimers, you shrink your authority. It's not about intelligence, it's about discipline. Discipline to stop. Discipline to pause. Discipline to let silence stretch. Silence creates leverage. Let's talk about arguments. In personal conflicts, the person who reacts most loses emotional position. If someone raises their voice and you match it, you are equal in chaos. But if they raise their voice and you lower yours, now the dynamic shifts. Power waits. Lower volume. Slower speech. Longer pauses. You are no longer reacting. You are directing. You have a choice. Escalate. Or control the frame. That's the key. Silence also reveals truth. When you stop interrupting people, they show you who they are. Their impatience. Their insecurity. Their arrogance. Most people expose themselves if you simply let them talk long enough. Silence creates leverage. Here's an exercise for you. In your next 3 conversations, focus on asking one strong question, then stay silent. Do not rescue the conversation. Do not clarify the question. Do not soften it. Ask. Pause. Watch. You will learn more in that silence than in 10 minutes of talking. Power waits. Now understand this deeply. Silence is not passivity. It is controlled presence. There is a difference. Passive silence avoids conflict. Powerful silence controls conflict. You don't withdraw. You remain steady. Eye contact. Relaxed posture. Measured breathing. You don't need their permission to hold your ground. In leadership, silence forces accountability. When a team member gives a weak excuse, most managers jump in to help them finish the sentence. Stop doing that. Let them sit in their explanation. Let them hear how it sounds. Silence creates leverage. People correct themselves when faced with quiet attention. It's not about dominance, it's about discipline. Discipline to resist interrupting. Discipline to resist defending. Discipline to resist proving. Proving is insecurity. Presence is power. You have a choice. Be loud and temporary, or calm and unforgettable. Power waits. And here's the deeper truth. When you master silence externally, you start mastering silence internally. You stop reacting to every thought. You stop chasing every emotional spike. You stop answering every internal criticism. That's real control. Because the loudest voice you must learn to silence is your own fear. Silence creates leverage. Leverage over conversations, leverage over conflicts, leverage over yourself. And self-control is the foundation of power. Remember this line. You don't need their permission. Not to pause, not to wait, not to remain calm. The world will test you. People will provoke you. Opportunities will pressure you. You have a choice. Rush or wait. React or observe. Speak or let silence do the work. That's the key. Silence is not empty. It is loaded. Loaded with control, loaded with confidence, loaded with leverage. Power waits. You've learned to stop over-talking. You've learned to use silence as pressure. You are no longer reacting automatically. But silence alone is not enough, because the world will try to provoke you emotionally. And if you still react internally, you're not free. You mastered your words. You sharpened your silence. Now it's time to master your reactions completely.
Chapter 3. Stop explaining yourself. You talk too much. Not because you're weak, but because you want to be understood. You want them to see your intention. You want them to know you meant well. You want them to approve. And that is where you lose authority. Results speak. The moment you over-explain, you signal doubt. You say, "Let me clarify." You say, "What I actually meant was." You say, "I just want to make sure you don't misunderstand." Stop. That's the key. It's not about being understood. It's about being respected. Respect is not built through explanation. It's built through consistency, through delivery, through results. Results speak. Look at the employee who misses a deadline. Instead of saying it won't happen again, they give a 5-minute story. Traffic, emails, family emergency, miscommunication. Maybe all true, but the more they explain, the smaller they look. It's not about the excuse. It's about discipline. Discipline to say, "I missed it. It's fixed. Here's the solution." Short, direct, closed. You have a choice. Defend your image or protect your authority. That's the key. In the workplace, over-explaining is often disguised as professionalism, but it's insecurity in a suit. When you constantly justify your decisions, you train people to question you. When you constantly clarify your boundaries, you teach people to test them. Results speak. Think about creators. A creator posts content. Someone criticizes it publicly. The insecure creator writes a paragraph defending their intention, argues in comments, tries to win the room. Authority drops instantly. The powerful creator, they say nothing, or they post again, stronger. It's not about being understood. It's about being respected. You don't need their permission to move forward. When you explain yourself to critics, you position them as judges. Why are they judging you? Because you stepped onto the stage. Stay on the stage. Results speak. Let's go deeper. Why do you explain? Because you fear assumptions. You think, if they misunderstand me, I'll lose status. Wrong. You lose status when you chase correction. High-value individuals let assumptions exist, not because they don't care, but because they're focused on output. You have a choice. Chase perception or build performance. That's the key. In leadership, this becomes critical. A leader makes a decision. Not everyone agrees. If the leader calls endless meetings to explain every angle, every reason, every internal thought process, something happens. They shrink. It's not about transparency. It's about discipline. Discipline to communicate clearly once, and then move. Results speak. Clear direction. Measured tone. No over-justification. If someone disagrees, listen. Adjust if needed, but do not beg for validation. You don't need their permission to lead. Now understand this carefully. There is a difference between clarity and over-explaining. Clarity is strategic. Over-explaining is emotional. Clarity says, here's the decision, here's the reason, here's the plan. Over-explaining says, I hope this makes sense. I just want everyone to feel okay. Please don't be upset. Feel the difference. One commands respect, the other requests approval. It's not about being understood. It's about being respected. Results speak. In personal relationships, the same rule applies. You set a boundary. I'm not available this weekend. Simple. But then comes the spiral. I've just been really busy and I haven't had time for myself, and I don't want you to think I'm ignoring you. Stop. You weaken your boundary when you defend it. You have a choice. State it once or negotiate it emotionally. That's the key. Boundaries don't need essays. They need consistency. It's not about harshness. It's about discipline. Discipline to tolerate discomfort. Because when you stop explaining, some people will feel uncomfortable. Let them. Silence creates leverage. And now you understand something deeper. Restraint creates respect. Results speak.
Let's talk about performance. If you are excellent at what you do, your work explains you. If you are consistent, your record explains you. If you are disciplined, your results explain you. When you explain instead of improve, you delay growth. You have a choice. Spend energy defending yesterday or building tomorrow. That's the key. There will be moments when correction is necessary. If you made a mistake that affects others, own it directly. No story, no drama. Ownership is powerful. Excuses are not. It's not about perfection. It's about discipline. Discipline to say less. Discipline to fix more. Results speak. Here's a practical rule. If you feel the urge to write a long defensive message, wait 10 minutes. Read it again. Cut it in half. Then cut it in half again. Ask yourself, does this protect my ego or does this solve the problem? You don't need their permission to stay concise. Another rule. When someone misunderstands you, ask one question instead of launching a defense. What specifically is unclear? Then listen. Most misunderstandings dissolve with one sentence. Most over-explanations create 5 new ones. You have a choice. Add noise or create clarity. That's the key. And here's the truth most people avoid. When you constantly explain yourself, you train your mind to seek external approval. You become addicted to being seen correctly. But real power doesn't obsess over perception. It focuses on performance. It's not about being understood. It's about being respected. Respect grows slowly, through repetition, through delivery, through quiet confidence. Results speak. And when your results are undeniable, explanations become unnecessary. People stop questioning. They start observing. They start adjusting to you. You don't need their permission to operate at a higher standard. Stop narrating your effort. Start showing your output. Stop defending your intent. Start proving your impact. You have a choice. Explain who you are, or demonstrate who you are. That's the key. This chapter is not about silence alone. It's about internal strength. The strength to tolerate being misunderstood temporarily. The strength to let your work mature. The strength to let results speak. Because when you stop explaining, you free up energy. Energy to build, to execute, to dominate your craft. And that connects to the larger theme of this book. Control. Control of your words. Control of your reactions. Control of your image. You mastered silence. Now you've mastered restraint in speech. But there's a deeper layer. Because even if you stop explaining out loud, you might still be explaining yourself in your head. Still arguing internally. Still replaying conversations. And that internal noise is the next enemy. You stop defending your words. Now it's time to defend your focus.
Chapter 4. Master tone before words. Words don't lead. Tone does. You can say the right sentence and still lose the room. You can speak perfect logic and still sound weak. Because people don't respond to vocabulary first. They respond to energy. Tone sets hierarchy. That's the key. The person who controls their tone controls the frame. The person who controls the frame controls the outcome. You have a choice. You can rush your words and sound uncertain, or you can slow down and sound unshakable. Slow is strong. When your voice is steady, people assume authority. When your tone is calm, people assume competence. When your delivery is grounded, people assume leadership. It's not about being loud. It's about being controlled. That's the key. Look at a courtroom. The best trial attorneys don't shout. They don't panic. They don't beg the jury to believe them. They lower their tone. They slow their pace. They pause before important points. Why? Because tone sets hierarchy. The calmest person in the room appears the most certain, and certainty wins. Now look at leadership briefings inside major corporations. When numbers drop and tension rises, weak leaders start explaining, fast, defensive, high-pitched. They overload the room with words. Strong leaders do the opposite. They pause. They speak slowly. They choose fewer words. They lower their tone. And suddenly, everyone listens. Slow is strong. You have a choice. In emotional moments, your body will want to speed up. Your heart will race. Your voice will tighten. Your sentences will shorten. That's biology. But leadership is not about biology. It's about discipline. It's not about emotion. It's about regulation. It's not about reacting. It's about positioning. That's the key. When someone attacks you verbally, notice your instinct. You want to interrupt. You want to defend. You want to raise your volume. But raising your volume lowers your authority. Tone sets hierarchy. The more emotional you sound, the less powerful you appear. The calmer you sound, the more dominant you become. You don't need their permission to slow down. You don't need their permission to pause. Silence after a statement is power. A measured breath is power. A steady cadence is power. Slow is strong. In crisis communication, this becomes survival. When a company faces public backlash, the worst move is emotional language. Apologies that sound panicked, explanations that sound rushed, statements that feel reactive. The strongest crisis leaders speak differently. They acknowledge, they pause, they commit, and they do it in a tone that says,
we are in control, because control of tone equals control of perception. That's the key. Here's what you must practice. First, lower your baseline speaking speed by 20%. Record yourself. Listen back. You are faster than you think. Second, eliminate filler reactions. No listen, no you have to understand, no nervous laughter. Those are signals of insecurity. It's not about being understood. It's about being respected. Respect begins in tone. Third, pause before responding to anything emotional. 3 seconds. Not 1, 3. Those 3 seconds separate amateurs from leaders. You have a choice. You can react instantly and sound triggered, or you can pause deliberately and sound strategic. Slow is strong. Now let's talk about hierarchy in conversation. In every interaction, someone sets the emotional temperature. If you match the other person's intensity, you surrender the lead. If you lower the intensity, you take control. Tone sets hierarchy. When someone is angry and you remain calm, you win. When someone is excited and you remain measured, you stabilize the room. When someone is chaotic and you remain grounded, you become the anchor. Anchors don't shout. Anchors don't rush. Anchors don't chase approval. You don't need their permission to stay steady. This applies to creators too. If you create content online and someone criticizes you publicly, your tone and response will define your brand. Defensive tone, you look fragile. Sarcastic tone, you look insecure. Calm, concise tone, you look untouchable. It's not about winning arguments. It's about projecting stability. That's the key. Mastering tone also means mastering body language. Your shoulders, your breathing, your facial tension. Your voice reflects your physiology, so control your breathing. Inhale slowly through your nose. Exhale longer than you inhale. Drop your shoulders before you speak. Your tone will follow. Slow is strong. Now understand this clearly. Words can be debated. Tone cannot. People may disagree with your logic, but they will still feel your certainty. And feeling always comes before thinking. Tone sets hierarchy. If you want to lead yourself first, which is the foundation of this entire book, then you must first lead your nervous system. You cannot lead others if your voice trembles under pressure. You cannot command respect if your tone seeks approval. You cannot project authority if your delivery begs to be liked. It's not about being charisma. It's about control. It's not about impressing. It's about stabilizing. It's not about dominance. It's about discipline. That's the key. Here's your assignment. For the next 7 days, speak 15% slower in every important interaction. Pause before every major statement. Lower your tone at the end of sentences instead of raising it. Upward tone sounds like a question. Downward tone sounds like certainty. Certainty leads. You have a choice. You can continue letting emotion dictate your delivery, or you can train your delivery to dictate perception, and perception becomes reality. Slow is strong. Remember this. The room does not follow the smartest voice. The room follows the steadiest voice. Tone sets hierarchy. Master your tone and your words will carry weight. Fail to master it, and even brilliant ideas will sound weak. You are not here to sound good. You are here to sound grounded. That's the key. You mastered your need to explain. You mastered when to stay silent. Now you are mastering how to speak, because leadership begins within. Control yourself first, then control the frame, then control the outcome. You are building internal authority, and internal authority always shows externally. Master your tone and the world listens differently. Now that you understand how to command a room without raising your voice, it's time to understand what truly multiplies your power. You've learned to control your reactions. You've learned to control your delivery. Now let's talk about control over something even more valuable.
Chapter 5. Never speak from emotion. Emotion feels powerful, but uncontrolled emotion makes you weak. Read that again. The fastest way to lose authority is to speak while you're emotional. Angry, hurt, defensive, excited, desperate. When you speak from emotion, you leak power. When you speak from control, you build it. Emotion is information, not instruction. That's the key. You have a choice. Every single time. Most people believe emotion just happens. They say, I couldn't help it. Yes, you could. You didn't lack control. You lacked discipline. It's not about feelings. It's about discipline. Emotion is information, not instruction. Let's break this down. Emotion is a signal. It tells you something matters. It tells you something feels unfair, threatening, exciting, disrespectful. But signals are not commands. Pain tells you something is wrong. It doesn't tell you to scream at the doctor. Anger tells you a boundary was crossed. It doesn't tell you to destroy the relationship. Emotion is information, not instruction. You have a choice.
Most arguments escalate because one person speaks from emotion, and the other responds from emotion. Volume rises. Tone sharpens. Words become weapons. Now it's not about solving the issue. It's about winning. And when ego enters, leadership exits. That's the key. Let's look at a common scenario. Two partners arguing. One says something careless. The other feels disrespected. Instead of pausing, they fire back immediately. You always do this. You never listen. You don't care. Now the conversation is no longer about the issue. It's about identity, labels, accusations, absolutes. The fight escalates, all because someone treated emotion like instruction. Now let's change the script. The same careless comment happens. You feel the heat rising. Your heart rate increases. Your jaw tightens. Pause. That pause is power. You breathe once, twice, and you say calmly, "When you said that, it felt dismissive. I want to understand what you meant." Slow is strong. Emotion is information, not instruction. Notice the difference. Same trigger, different discipline. You have a choice. Now let's step into the workplace. An employee gets criticized in a meeting. They feel embarrassed, exposed. So they defend themselves instantly. That's not true. You didn't give me enough time. Other teams were late too. Now they look reactive, defensive, small. It's not about being right. It's about being respected. Instead, imagine this response. They sit still. They take notes. They respond calmly. Understood. I'll correct it. That's it. No emotional leakage. No defensive tone. Results will speak. That's the key. Controlled speech builds power. Now think about leadership in crisis. A company faces public backlash. Customers are angry. Employees are nervous. If the leader reacts emotionally, panicked voice, blaming tone, defensive statements, confidence collapses. But if the leader speaks slowly, measured, grounded, we are aware, we are addressing it. Here is the plan. Tone sets hierarchy. Calm dominates chaos. Emotion is information, not instruction. You don't need their permission to stay composed. You don't need validation to regulate yourself. You have a choice. Here's the truth most people avoid. Speaking from emotion feels powerful in the moment. It feels relieving. It feels honest. But relief is temporary. Damage can be permanent. Screenshots last forever. Words echo. Reputations stick. It's not about honesty. It's about discipline. Now let's talk about impulse. Impulse says, reply now. Discipline says, wait. Impulse says, post it. Discipline says, draft it. Reread it tomorrow. Impulse says, say what you feel. Discipline says, say what serves. Discipline over impulse. That's the key. Here's a practical rule. Never respond at peak emotion. Not by text, not by email, not in person. If your body is activated, your judgment is compromised. Step away. Go silent. Silence is not weakness. Silence is strategy. You have a choice. Create a personal rule. If angry, wait 1 hour. If deeply hurt, wait 1 day. If publicly attacked, wait until calm clarity returns. You don't lose power by waiting. You gain it. Emotion is information, not instruction. Another critical shift. Separate feeling from action. You are allowed to feel anger. You are allowed to feel disappointment. You are allowed to feel frustration. But you are not required to act from them. That's emotional maturity. That's leadership. That's discipline. It's not about being emotionless. It's about being sovereign. Controlled speech builds power. When someone tries to provoke you, they are testing your stability. If they can control your emotions, they control you. Let that sink in. If they can trigger you on command, you are predictable. And predictable people are easy to manipulate. You have a choice. When insulted, you can react. Or you can observe. When criticized, you can explode. Or you can evaluate. When misunderstood, you can chase validation. Or you can let results speak. Discipline over impulse. That's the key. The strongest person in the room is not the loudest. It's the calmest. Calm under pressure signals authority.
Controlled breathing, measured words, minimal reaction. That presence changes dynamics instantly. Arguments end faster. Conflict shrink. Respect increases. Because emotional control communicates something powerful. I am not ruled by circumstance. That is dominance. Now internalize this. Emotion is information, not instruction. Say it again. Emotion is information, not instruction. Every time you feel the surge, that is your training ground. That is your opportunity, not to suppress, but to regulate, not to explode, but to lead. You don't need their permission to pause. You don't need their permission to respond slowly. You don't need their permission to be composed. You have a choice. And every time you choose discipline over impulse, you reinforce your identity. You become someone who cannot be easily shaken. That's power. Real power. Not dramatic power. Not loud power. Stable power. Controlled speech builds it. Emotional speech leaks it. You decide. That's the key. You stopped explaining yourself. You mastered your tone. Now you've learned to separate feeling from reaction. You are no longer a slave to impulse. But emotional control is only part of the equation, because even controlled words can be wasted if they are given too freely. You mastered your emotions. Now, let's talk about scarcity.
Chapter 6. Ask questions that control the room. Power does not always speak first. Power asks. The one asking questions leads the conversation, always. Questions guide outcomes. Remember that. Questions guide outcomes. Most people walk into a room trying to prove themselves. They talk too much. They explain too much. They defend too quickly. That's weakness disguised as confidence. You don't need to convince. You need to position. When you ask the right question, you shift the frame. You move from being evaluated to being in control. That's the key. You have a choice. You can react, or you can redirect. And redirection begins with a question. In negotiations, the amateur argues price. The professional asks, what would make this a yes for you? Feel the difference. One chases approval. The other controls the structure. Questions guide outcomes. In a job interview, weak candidates say, I'm a hard worker. I'm passionate. Strong candidates ask, what does success look like in this role in the first 90 days? Now the interviewer is answering. Now you are observing. Now you are leading. You don't need their permission to lead the room. You need composure and strategy. It's not about talking more, it's about asking better. Understand this. The brain responds differently when it must answer a question. A question forces engagement. A statement invites resistance. When you tell someone you're wrong, they defend. When you ask, help me understand how you reached that conclusion, they explain. And in explaining, they reveal weaknesses. That's the key. You don't attack, you inquire. Discipline over ego. In personal boundaries, this becomes even more powerful. Someone disrespects your time. Instead of saying, you're always late, this is ridiculous, you ask, is there a reason our agreed time doesn't work for you? Calm, direct, controlled. Now the burden shifts to them. Questions guide outcomes. In conflict, emotion wants to explode. Impulse wants to dominate. But you already learned, you have a choice. Ask instead of accuse. Is this conversation productive right now? What result are we trying to create here? Do you want to solve this or win this? Notice what happens. Silence. Reflection. Reset. You don't need to convince, you need to position. The question positions you above the chaos. Let's break this down into discipline you can use immediately. First, ask open-ended, outcome-focused questions. Not, did you do this? But, what was your approach here?
Not, why would you do that? Which triggers shame. But, what led to that decision? Tone matters. Calm. Steady. You mastered tone before words. Now you master direction before dominance. Second, ask questions that clarify standards. In leadership, what does excellence look like here? What is the measurable outcome? You are not criticizing. You are defining. It's not about aggression. It's about precision. Third, ask questions that expose misalignment. In negotiation, how does this align with what we agreed earlier? In relationships, what expectation are we operating under right now? You are not emotional. You are strategic. Emotion is reaction. Strategy is power. Questions guide outcomes. Now understand something deeper. The person asking questions controls time. When you ask, the other person pauses. They think. They respond. You set the tempo. Slow is strong. When you rush to fill silence, you surrender control. When you let the silence stretch after your question, you build pressure. That's the key. Ask. Pause. Hold. Let them work for clarity. In interviews, this changes everything. Instead of answering immediately, you can ask, "Before I answer, can you clarify what outcome matters most to you?" Now you tailor your response. Now you avoid guessing. Now you lead. You don't need to convince, you need to position. Position yourself as thoughtful. Position yourself as measured. Position yourself as someone who thinks before speaking. In negotiations, ask calibrated questions. Instead of saying, "That price is too high," ask, "How am I supposed to make this work at that number?" It's calm. It's firm. It forces them to solve the problem. You are no longer defensive. You are directive. Questions guide outcomes. But here's the discipline most people avoid. You must ask without emotional charge. If your question drips with sarcasm, it loses power. If your tone leaks frustration, you surrender hierarchy. You have a choice. It's not about cleverness, it's about composure. It's not about dominance, it's about discipline. When someone challenges you publicly, don't argue. Ask, "What specifically concerns you about this approach?" Now they must articulate. Now vague criticism becomes specific. And specifics can be handled. Vagueness creates chaos. Questions create structure. That's the key. Let's make it practical. From today forward, stop defending instantly. Stop explaining prematurely. Stop reacting emotionally. Instead, build a habit. When tension rises, ask one strategic question before making any statement. 1. That pause alone will transform your presence. In meetings, become known as the person who asks the clarifying question. In relationships, become known as the person who seeks understanding before judgment. In conflict, become known as the person who redirects the energy. You don't need their permission to elevate your standard. You need discipline over impulse. And remember this. He who asks defines the frame. He who defines the frame defines the outcome. Questions guide outcomes. This chapter is not about manipulation. It's about responsibility. When you ask better questions, you create better environments. You reduce noise. You increase clarity. And clarity is power. You are not here to overpower rooms. You are here to stabilize them. You have a choice. Speak to prove. Or ask to lead. That's the key. Master this, and conversations stop feeling like battles. They start feeling like architecture. You build them. You shape them. You direct them. You don't need to convince, you need to position. And now you understand how. You've learned to control your tone. You've learned to restrain emotion. Now you've learned to guide with questions. But there is one final layer to conversational power. Because sometimes the strongest move is not asking. It's withholding.
Chapter 7. Remove neediness from your voice.
Neediness is louder than words. You can say the right sentence with the wrong energy and lose respect instantly. People don't respond to vocabulary, they respond to emotional posture. Neediness repels respect. Let that sink in. When you seek approval, your voice changes. It softens at the wrong time. It rises at the end of sentences. It asks for agreement instead of delivering clarity. And people feel it. You don't need validation. That's the foundation of this chapter. You don't need validation. Most people speak to be liked. Strong people speak to be clear. It's not about being liked, it's about being clear. That's the key. Listen carefully. Two people say the same sentence. First version. I was just thinking maybe we could try this approach, if that's okay. Second version. This is the approach I recommend. Here's why. Same idea, different energy, different outcome. One seeks permission, one assumes position. You have a choice. Every time you open your mouth, you choose your posture. Weak posture says, please accept me. Strong posture says, this is my position. You don't need their permission to hold a position. Now understand something deeper. Neediness is not about volume, it's not about being loud, it's about emotional dependency. If your mood depends on their reaction, you are needy. If your tone shifts when they disagree, you are needy. If you over-explain to avoid tension, you are needy, and people sense it instantly. It's not about insecurity, it's about discipline. Discipline over impulse. The impulse to fill silence. The impulse to justify. The impulse to soften truth. You must eliminate those. Here's how. First, stop over-explaining. When you state a boundary, state it once. Weak. I just feel like maybe I need some time because I've been really busy and it's just a lot. Strong. I'm not available tonight. Silence. Let it land. You don't need validation. Second, remove upward inflection. When your sentence sounds like a question, even when it's not, you give away authority. Practice finishing statements with downward tone. This is the deadline. Not, this is the deadline. Small shift, massive difference. Tone sets hierarchy. Third, stop apologizing for existing. Apologize when you are wrong, not when you are present. Weak. Sorry, can I add something? Strong. I'd like to add something. You have a choice. Shrink or stand. It's not about arrogance, it's about alignment. Alignment between what you think and how you speak. Neediness creates hesitation. Hesitation creates doubt. Doubt spreads. Clarity creates stability. Stability builds respect. It's not about being liked, it's about being clear. In relationships, neediness sounds like this. Are you mad at me? Did I do something wrong? You still care about me, right? That energy pushes people away. Secure energy sounds like this. If something's off, let's talk about it. I'm open to feedback. I value clarity. See the difference? One begs for reassurance, the other invites dialogue. You don't need validation. Validation is a bonus, not a requirement. In professional environments, this becomes even more critical. When presenting ideas, don't dilute them with insecurity. Weak. This might be stupid, but... Stop. The moment you say that, people look for the stupidity. Strong. Here's a perspective worth considering. You frame the value. You control the perception. That's the key. Let's address the real fear behind neediness. Rejection. You soften your tone because you fear pushback. You over-explain because you fear disapproval. You seek reassurance because you fear abandonment. But you have a choice. Fear can control your delivery, or discipline can. It's not about fear disappearing. It's about discipline speaking anyway. Discipline over impulse. When someone disagrees with you, don't rush to repair the tension. Hold your ground calmly. I see it differently. That's not my view. I'm comfortable with my decision. No anger, no apology, no justification marathon. You don't need their permission to disagree. Strong voices are not loud, they are steady. Steady pace, steady breathing, steady eye contact. Neediness rushes, strength pauses. Slow is strong. Here's a powerful exercise. Record yourself speaking. Listen for filler words. Listen for just, maybe, kind of, I think. These are cushions. Cushions soften impact. Remove them. Instead of, I just think maybe we should kind of reconsider. Say, we should reconsider. Direct, clean, respectable. It's not about being harsh, it's about being precise. Precision builds authority. And remember this, people trust certainty more than charm.
You can be kind without being needy. You can be warm without being dependent. You can be respectful without shrinking. You don't need validation. If someone doesn't like your clarity, that's information, not instruction. Emotion is information, not instruction. Remember that from earlier. If they react negatively, stay grounded. I understand your perspective. Then stop. No chasing approval, no scrambling to fix their feelings. You are responsible for your message, not their comfort. That's the key. Neediness leaks power because it signals this: my stability depends on you. Remove that signal. Your stability depends on you. When you walk into a room, walk in complete. Not hoping to be chosen, not hoping to be approved, not hoping to be praised. Complete. You don't need validation. And here's the paradox. When you stop needing approval, you often receive more respect. When you stop chasing acceptance, you often become more attractive. When you stop over-explaining, people listen more carefully. Because certainty is magnetic. It's not about being liked. It's about being clear. Clarity is confidence in action. So from this moment forward, speak once, speak clearly. Remove apology where it's unnecessary. Remove filler. Remove upward tone. Remove emotional dependency. Replace it with discipline. You have a choice. Every sentence is a decision. Every tone is a signal. Every pause is power. You don't need their permission to take up space. Stand in your words. Let them breathe. Let them land. Neediness repels respect. Clarity commands it. You've learned to control tone. You've learned to master emotion. You've learned to guide with questions. Now you've removed approval seeking from your voice. But there is still one final layer of power. Because even when your voice is strong, your peasants can be stronger. You've removed neediness from your speech. Now it's time to remove it from your identity.
Chapter 8. Say no without explanation. No is a complete sentence. Read that again. No is a complete sentence. Most people don't struggle with time management. They struggle with boundary management. They say yes when they mean no. They explain when they should decline. They justify when they should stand still. And every unnecessary explanation leaks authority. You have a choice. You can protect your time, or you can protect their feelings. You cannot always do both. That's the key. High performers understand this early. Leaders understand this deeply. Mentors live by it daily. They do not over-explain their boundaries. They say, "No, I'm not available. That won't work for me. I'll pass." Silence. No is a complete sentence. Weak boundaries sound like this: "I'd love to help, but I'm just really busy right now and I have so much going on, and maybe next time." Stop. Every extra word invites negotiation. It signals doubt. It signals guilt. It signals that your no can be reversed. It's not about being rude. It's about discipline. Discipline over impulse. The impulse to soften. The impulse to over-explain. The impulse to be liked. It's not about being liked. It's about being clear. You don't need their permission to protect your time. Let's break this down practically. Scenario 1. A colleague asks you to take on extra work you don't want. Weak response: "I mean, I guess I could try, but I'm already kind of overloaded." Strong response: "I'm at capacity. I won't be able to take that on." Stop talking. If they push, repeat calmly: "I'm at capacity." Broken record technique. No escalation. No anger. No essays. That's the key. Scenario 2. A friend invites you somewhere you don't want to go. Weak: "I'm sorry, I just feel tired and I have a lot tomorrow and..." Strong: "I'm staying in tonight." That's it. You are not required to submit a report for your decision. No is a complete sentence. Now understand this. When you over-explain, you subconsciously ask for approval. You're saying, "Is this reason good enough?" But you have a choice. You can believe your reason is enough, or you can beg for validation. You don't need validation. If your schedule matters to you, that's enough. If your energy matters to you, that's enough. If your priorities matter to you, that's enough. It's not about selfishness. It's about self-respect. And self-respect is visible. Business leaders guard their calendars aggressively. They don't say, "I'm so sorry, I just have a million things." They say, "I'm not available at that time." Clean. Final. Neutral. Notice the tone. No emotion. No apology. No story. Emotion invites debate. Clarity ends it.
You have a choice. You can train people to respect your boundaries, or you can train them to ignore them. Every time you say yes when you mean no, you weaken your own authority. Every time you say no clearly, you strengthen it. That's the key. Let's address guilt. You feel guilty when you disappoint someone. But guilt is not instruction. It is information. Just like we said before, emotion is information, not instruction. The feeling of guilt does not mean you are wrong. It means you are uncomfortable. Growth is uncomfortable. It's not about comfort. It's about discipline. Discipline over impulse. Here's a powerful rule. If you wouldn't enthusiastically say yes, say no. Half yes creates full resentment. Resentment destroys relationships faster than clarity ever will. Clear no? Healthy relationship. Confusing yes. Hidden frustration. You have a choice. Protect short-term approval or protect long-term respect. High performers protect focus. They say no to distractions, no to unnecessary meetings, no to energy-draining conversations, no to opportunities that don't align. Because every yes costs something. Time, energy, attention, and those are finite. When you say no, you are saying yes to something else. Yes to your mission. Yes to your standards. Yes to your growth. You don't need their permission to prioritize your life. Now let's refine your delivery. Step 1. Remove excessive apologies. Instead of, "I'm really sorry, but I can't," say, "I can't." If you must soften, use one sentence only. "I appreciate you thinking of me. I'm not available." Then stop. Step 2. Control your tone. Say it calmly. Say it slowly. Say it once. Strength is quiet. Step 3. Do not fill the silence. After you say no, pause. Silence feels heavy because you're used to earning approval. Let it be heavy. That weight is authority settling into the room. No is a complete sentence. In mentorship, powerful mentors don't over-explain refusals. They say, "That's not aligned with my direction. I don't take that on. That's outside my focus." And they move on. They don't debate their standards. You shouldn't either. It's not about harshness. It's about hierarchy. If you don't value your time, no one else will. If you don't protect your energy, no one else will. You have a choice. Shrink your boundaries to fit others, or hold your boundaries and let others adjust. Some people will resist. They benefited from your lack of boundaries. That resistance is proof you're changing. That's the key. Do not confuse pushback with wrongdoing. Sometimes pushback is just someone losing access to your unlimited availability. And that's okay. You don't need their permission to evolve. From now on, say no clearly. Say no calmly. Say no once. No is a complete sentence. Remember this. Powerful people are selective. Selective with time, selective with energy, selective with access. And selectivity signals value. You are not required to attend everything. You are not required to accept everything. You are not required to explain everything. You are required to lead yourself. And leadership begins with boundaries. You mastered your tone. You removed neediness from your voice. Now you have protected your time with clarity. Because without boundaries, all your discipline collapses. You have learned to say no. Now, it's time to master what happens after you say yes.
Chapter 9. Let results speak for you. Stop announcing. Start executing. Most people talk too much about what they're going to do. Very few quietly do it. That difference changes everything. Results speak. Not promises, not intentions, not motivational speeches. Results. You have a choice. You can chase attention, or you can build evidence. That's the key. When outcomes are undeniable, communication becomes effortless. You don't have to argue. You don't have to convince. You don't have to defend yourself. Effort silently wins. Look at the silent performers in any field. The top salesperson who doesn't brag, but closes. The athlete who doesn't trash talk but dominates. The entrepreneur who doesn't post daily announcements but scales revenue. They understand something you must understand. Credibility is earned in private. Recognition is received in public. Results speak. Talking drains energy. Working compounds it. It's not about hype, it's about discipline. Discipline to wake up early. Discipline to train when tired. Discipline to finish when bored. Because boredom kills more dreams than difficulty ever will. You don't need their permission to improve. You don't need applause to execute. If you require validation before effort, you will stay average. That's the key. Let's break this down practically. Scenario 1, career growth. Weak approach. I'm working on something big. I have huge plans. I'm about to level up. Strong approach. Silence. Skill development. Delivered projects. Measured results. Then one day, promotion. No announcement needed. Results speak. Scenario 2, fitness. Weak approach. Posting daily gym selfies. Talking about new routines. Declaring transformation before it exists. Strong approach. Train, eat right, sleep properly. Repeat. 3 months later, visible change. Let them notice. Effort silently wins. When you talk too early, you sabotage yourself. Why? Because the brain rewards you for the announcement. Dopamine from attention replaces dopamine from achievement. You feel accomplished without doing the work. You have a choice. Chase the feeling of progress or build actual progress. That's the key. Real power is quiet. The loudest person in the room is often the least secure. The calmest person is often the most prepared. Because preparation creates confidence. Confidence removes the need for noise. Results speak. Now understand this clearly. Silence does not mean invisibility. It means focus. It means controlled energy. It means delayed gratification. You don't need their permission to stay quiet. You don't owe anyone a progress report. Your only obligation is execution. Let's talk about social dynamics. When you constantly explain your goals, you invite opinions. Opinions create doubt. Doubt creates hesitation. Hesitation kills momentum. Instead, work in silence. Improve privately. Deliver publicly. That's the key. In negotiations, the person with results has leverage. In relationships, the person with stability has leverage. In business, the person with performance has leverage. Leverage removes the need to persuade. Results speak. You don't argue your worth when it's visible. You don't debate your value when it's proven. You don't chase respect when it's earned. Effort silently wins. Now let's get tactical. Step 1, reduce declarations. Before you announce a goal, ask yourself, have I earned the right to speak on this yet? If not, stay quiet. Step 2, track outcomes. Numbers don't lie. Revenue, weight lifted, books read, hours practiced. Measure, improve, repeat. Step 3, replace talk time with work time. If you spend 30 minutes discussing a plan, spend 60 executing it. Minimum. That's discipline. It's not about motivation, it's about repetition. Repetition builds skill. Skill builds results. Results build reputation. And reputation speaks for you when you're not in the room. You have a choice. Build a reputation of noise, or build a reputation of execution. One fades, one compounds. Let them notice. Let them ask, how did you do that? Not because you told them, but because you showed them. This also protects your energy. When you stop announcing, you stop performing for approval. You start performing for progress. That shift changes everything. It's not about attention, it's about authority. Authority comes from consistency. Consistency is unglamorous. It's the same actions, on the same days, without applause. Effort silently wins.
And here's the truth most people avoid. The work is boring. The discipline is repetitive. The results are delayed. But that delay filters out the weak. You don't need their permission to outwork them quietly. You don't need to compete publicly. Compete privately. With yesterday's version of you. That's the key. When results speak, conversations change. Instead of, trust me, it becomes, look. Instead of, I promise, it becomes, it's done. And that language is powerful. Completion commands respect. Execution commands authority. Delivery commands opportunity. Results speak. From this moment forward, stop announcing early. Stop explaining your grind. Stop seeking applause. Start building quietly. Start improving daily. Start finishing consistently. Let them notice. Because when your outcomes are undeniable, you don't need to raise your voice. Your work raises it for you. You mastered your tone. You mastered your boundaries. Now you master your execution. Because self-leadership is not proven by words. It is proven by outcomes. And outcomes create freedom. You have learned to let results speak. Now it's time to control something even more powerful, your emotional reactions when results are tested.
Chapter 10. Build an identity that commands respect. Everything changes when your identity changes. Not your goals, not your strategy, not your environment. Your identity. Identity drives action. Read that again. Identity drives action. You don't rise to your goals. You fall to your identity. That's the key. If you see yourself as uncertain, you will speak uncertainly. If you see yourself as emotional, you will react emotionally. If you see yourself as overlooked, you will behave like someone waiting to be chosen. You speak who you are, and the world responds accordingly. You have a choice. Keep the old identity, or build one that commands respect. This chapter locks it in. From this moment forward, your internal script changes. I am calm. I am precise. I am deliberate. Not someday, now. Because identity is not discovered. It is decided. That's the key. Let's break this down. Most people try to change behavior without changing identity. They say, I will try to be more confident. Wrong frame. Confidence is not a behavior. It is an identity standard. Instead say, I am someone who speaks clearly. I am someone who pauses before reacting. I am someone who does not chase approval. Identity drives action. When your identity shifts, behavior follows automatically. If you identify as a disciplined person, you don't debate whether to work out. You train. If you identify as a calm leader, you don't argue emotionally. You respond strategically. You speak who you are. Now understand this. Respect is not requested. It is transmitted. Through posture, through tone, through pacing, through boundaries. And all of it begins internally. It's not about personality. It's about discipline. You don't need to be loud. You don't need to be charismatic. You don't need to dominate conversations. You need to be grounded. Grounded in who you are. I am calm. Calm people do not rush their words. Calm people do not over-explain. Calm people do not react to bait. They observe. They decide. They respond. You have a choice. React from insecurity or respond from identity. That's the key. Let's talk transformation. Picture someone who used to interrupt constantly. Why? Fear of being ignored. That's not a communication problem. That's an identity problem. They saw themselves as unheard. The shift? I am someone worth listening to. Now they pause. Now they speak slower. Now they don't fight for airtime. And people lean in. Identity drives action. Another example. Someone who used to over-apologize. Sorry, just a quick thought. Sorry, I might be wrong. Sorry for bothering you. That's not politeness. That's insecurity leaking through language. The shift? I am someone whose time and ideas have value. The apology disappears. Clarity replaces it. You speak who you are. This is not arrogance. It is self-definition. Arrogance screams,
Identity stands still. That's the difference. Now here is your assignment. Write down 3 identity statements. Short, clear, non-negotiable. For example, I am calm under pressure. I am direct and respectful. I finish what I start. Read them daily. Not as motivation, as instruction, because your brain obeys repetition. It's not about feelings. It's about conditioning. Condition the mind. Condition the language. Condition the posture. That's discipline. You don't need their permission to upgrade your identity. You don't need evidence first. Act first. The evidence will follow. Because once you decide who you are, you filter behavior through that lens. Before speaking, ask, what would a calm, precise, deliberate person say right now? Then say that. Before reacting, ask, what would someone who commands respect do here? Then do that. Identity drives action. Now understand something powerful. Your past behavior does not define your future identity. That was a version of you. This is a decision. You have a choice. Stay attached to the old narrative or build a new standard. That's the key. When identity shifts, communication becomes effortless because there is no internal conflict, no neediness, no overcompensation, no emotional leakage, just alignment. Alignment creates authority. Authority creates respect. Respect creates influence. And influence creates opportunity. You speak who you are. If you believe you are small, your voice will shrink. If you believe you are capable, your words will land differently. If you believe you are disciplined, your tone will stabilize. This is why self-leadership matters. Because leadership begins inside. Not with followers. Not with titles. With identity. It's not about talent. It's about discipline. Talent is inconsistent. Discipline is predictable. And predictable strength builds trust. Let's go deeper. Identity is reinforced by standards. What do you tolerate? Disrespect? Excuses? Your own procrastination? If you tolerate it, you identify with it. Raise the standard. I am someone who keeps promises. I am someone who protects my time. I am someone who controls my emotions. Then enforce it, even when it's uncomfortable. Especially when it's uncomfortable. That's where identity solidifies. You don't need their permission to hold yourself to a higher level. You only need consistency. Small actions, repeated daily, aligned with identity. That's the key. And here's the final truth. The world treats you the way you teach it to treat you. Through boundaries, through tone, through posture, through consistency. All of it flows from who you believe you are. So decide carefully, because identity drives action, and action builds your life. From this chapter forward, you are not trying to be respected. You are becoming someone who naturally commands it. Calm, precise, deliberate. You speak who you are. You mastered your reactions. You mastered your results. Now you have mastered your identity. But identity must be protected, because the world will test it. Next, we step into the final discipline, the one that keeps your identity unshaken under pressure. You don't need louder words. You need stronger control. Powerful communication is not talent. It's discipline. You learn to stop explaining, to slow down, to choose silence over noise, clarity over emotion, results over validation. You have a choice. Speak like everyone else, or speak like someone who decides outcomes. From this moment forward, pause before you speak. Cut unnecessary words. Remove emotion. Deliver with intent. Let your presence do the talking. Let your results confirm it. That's the key. Now here's your challenge.